This is The Bottom Line, a show designed to help Australian businesses succeed. On the show, you'll hear from leading Australian business owners as they share the lessons they've learned building their companies. You'll learn from their successes as well as some of the challenges they faced along the way. We also talk to experts from a range of fields who share specialised techniques you can use to improve your business. I'm your host, Savan Tuna, and I'm a director at Alexander Spencer, and I'm really passionate about helping Australian businesses succeed. Today, I'm chatting to Eyob Yesus, Chief Events Officer at Icon Corporate Events. Eyob has an incredible journey from managing music concerts to becoming a corporate events expert. We dive deep into the world of corporate events and why they're important more than ever in our digital age. You'll hear how events can be a game changer for business connections, why face-to-face interactions still matter, and the secrets to hosting unforgettable corporate gatherings. Let's get into it. Hi, Eyob. Thank you so much for joining me on The Bottom Line today.
Thank you for having me, Savan. Really appreciate it.
For the listeners out there that don't know who you are and your business, Icon Corporate Events, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm in the event management industry, and I've been in that industry for about 25 years. So I actually say very fortunate to be a part of an industry that connects people 24 hours, 7 days a week. I started in music and then made my way to corporate. So it's been a great journey.
So tell us about music. That's interesting. So were you a DJ? Did you sing? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I tried all those things, Sivan, but I ended up being behind the scenes, organizing those concerts, tours, and festivals. So I ended up being an event manager, essentially, to these amazing concerts and tours and festivals with some amazing US artists. Yeah, so very happy that I did that for about 10 years.
That sounds so cool. Well, you got to tell us a little bit more. So take us through that journey. So you said amazing US artists and concerts and some of these big events that you've got experience in. Tell us about that journey. Where did you start in events? And you may have been behind the scenes in some of these concerts that our listeners may have gone to.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you a little bit more background. I moved to Australia in 1998. I was a 18-year-old boy, very naive to the world, and then decided to move to Sydney by myself in 2000, even more naive to try and conquer the world, which was fantastic because it actually led me to a lot of great places. And one of the places was the music industry. And as a part of that, I started off by going to a record store, which was very popular in 2000, and ended up meeting some DJs there who kind of took me on board and said, well, look, you seem like a really cool guy. Why not help us out? Do you know what I mean? With these events and with these clubs and with these these music industry. And I ended up dabbling a little bit into DJing, a little bit in that, but I also ended up just doing the events from the behind scene. But the one thing I loved was actually music. Coming from an African background, an Ethiopian background, music was just in our blood, really, because there's no other way to put it. Because if you look at my family from one end to the other, it's music and dancing all the time. So that's a big part of our culture. And I think that helped me, really. That helped me get into that scene. And then I had to learn a lot of things on the way.
Tell us the biggest artist that you've been involved with where you were behind the scenes.
So one of the biggest festival we did, 25,000 people, and that was with an agency called Urban Agency. So I was one of their event managers there. There was Chris Brown on that tour. There was Fat Joe on that tour. There were some amazing, amazing hip hop and R&B artists that were all on that tour. And there was 25,000 people in the Allianz Stadium at the time.
Amazing. So Icon Corporate Events. So the word corporate doesn't really relate to a singer coming down from the US and, singing in front of everyone. So tell us about the birth of your business, Icon Corporate Events, and what are the services? What does it do?
Well, after 10 years in that industry, Savan, I kind of took a step back, if you want to call it, and especially in Sydney, where a lot of things progressed quite fast. And I basically wanted to take a step back and take a break, get married, do the whole 9 yards, as they call it. Then when I decided to go back into a business or running a business, I said, oh, okay, I still love events. I still have a great foundation from my music industry. I want to move into a different industry, which is the corporate events industry, and see how that works. Now, when I moved into that industry, I didn't know as much, but I knew that my organizing skills would have helped me get somewhere with it. And in the first month, I was able to secure a contract that lasted 9 years and only ended up finishing just last year. So, which is fantastic.
So let's define corporate events. So corporate events could be a Christmas party, it could be a launch of a product. Events is such a broad word. We're fortunate enough at Alexander Spencer, we've moved into a new office with a beautiful space. We had our first corporate event last week, and that included inviting a lot of our partners and clients and celebrating, the launch of our office with the people that help us make what we do happen. But define corporate events. So what is the niche services? Is it any event that a corporate company runs? What do you specialize in a particular area? Let's dive deeper into the Icon corporate event service offering.
Yeah, sure. So corporate events is essentially any business event. So it is a Christmas function for your staff, or it is a product launch for your brand, or it is a conference that enables you to talk about a particular industry to grow that industry. So anything attached to business, non-for-profits, and charities, you classify that as corporate events. And within that, all those formats is essentially what it is, the conferences, the Christmas functions. There's so many different types, as you can appreciate. So essentially, corporate events are that.
Eyob, obviously, we're going very fast to a digital world. I reckon 15 years ago, maybe even earlier than that, I've never, ever had gone to a webinar before. You'd go to a training session out into a facility and there'd be speakers. So we are going to this digital world where you do have webinars, you have social media where you can get education through social platforms and even connections. And, events do build those connections. What are you finding in the industry? Are there more corporate events happening because people want to connect? Or are you finding a drop off on businesses investing in these face-to-face event style approaches to connection?
Yeah, so corporate events have actually taken up quite a big lift this year, especially. And the main reason for it is one is actually the digital aspect, where a lot of people have sort of utilized digital to try and connect with people, but also at the same time, it makes them feel a little bit more distant and a little bit more away from things. So events or in-person events in general have been a great way to connect people. Because of that, a lot of companies are now implementing event management strategies to connect people, their clients, their stakeholders, just like you did with your event a couple of days ago. Same thing, you were able to connect those stakeholders, and it's become really important as a part of your marketing and your people strategy.
Yeah, and how does that fit in? So obviously with the marketing and branding strategy, you have a part of that is, your website, your SEO, digital marketing, social media. Events obviously fits within that brand building and getting people in a room to talk about particular different things. Is it something that's underutilized, and how does it complement all the other marketing, branding, traditional channels that businesses go through?
So to answer the underutilized, absolutely. I would say it's absolutely underutilized. And then the second part of your question in terms of how we can use it, how we can use events. Now you mentioned branding, but for example, a sales exercise, there are expos and trade shows, do you know what I mean? That put you in front of a customer that actually have higher conversion rates than your SEO and your digital. For B2B and service based industries, I mean, it's critical to have events as your strategy and not just organizing the events yourself, but actually attending events, sponsoring an event, partnering with someone that's with a brand that's aligned with you, and then also hosting an event. So there's actually 4 different ways that you can map out your event calendar to maximize branding, conversions, and connections. And more importantly, the relationships that you gain from events are just phenomenal because it's that face-to-face value and webinar value.
I want to talk about a success story that you've been involved in. Can you tell us a client you've worked with or a customer you've worked with where they were a little bit hesitant, they weren't 100% sure how the event was going to go, and then you delivered the product or delivered this event and it just blew them apart? What was this real success story where there may have been a little bit doubt by the client in its first instance and it ended up being amazing?
Yeah, so we had a client actually just last year called the Professional Speakers Australia, and it was a fresh new direction for them. In terms, what I mean by that is it was their first event back post COVID, and then second part is they hired us because one, we have a creative aspect that no other event management company has. Creativity, given that I came from the music background, it always helps me build these crazy ideas that hopefully will get your audience connected at the event. So the actual convention itself was the theme was called Fresh. So the idea was to bring fresh ideas, fresh new speakers, fresh ways of connecting their member base. And we did so many different things than their traditional convention for the past 30 odd years, if you want to call it, that the results were super clear. 8.9% results is what we got from the survey that was sent out. So the satisfaction rate for that particular conference, our event management company in particular, so how well was it organized? We got another 8.8% from that survey. And that's out of the 200 attendees that attended. I think it's about 110 that replied back to that survey. And then on top of that, the format, what we had on there, the entertainment, the exciting staging background that we had, the digital presentation that we had, they've never seen that before. So that all was added things that really excited them that made it such a great success.
So tell us about just the things you need to do in an event. So event, I just think about food, photography, videography, and also people go out of their way to come to an event. So if they feel like they need to take some value, when you go to organize an event, you start to put together the event plan. What are the things that you look for? How do we start that process? What should we look at first before we get to the semantics or the process of all the things that need to be happen in an event?
Yeah, so Savan, it's interesting how you pick the food, the drinks, the content, and that's what everyone picks out first, especially for the fresh eyes that doesn't know much about events. But professional event managers actually start from the risk aspect. They say, "Oh, okay, I need to make sure that I approach three different venues to make sure that nothing happens to that event." So events are very, as you can appreciate, unforgiving. Do you know what I mean? Because if something goes wrong, guess what? Everything comes back to the event manager. So for us, it is about risk management. Yes, it sounds so boring. I know that everybody's thinking that is the last thing that I want to hear, but it is the most important part. And it is the one that will make sure that your event runs smoothly. And then obviously, once you get that right and you have a really good plan in place for that, then you go to the fun stuff. Then you start choosing the entertainment. Then you start choosing the content. So the biggest thing around it is really understanding the purpose of the event and what you, as a business owner, want to achieve with it. Because there's a lot of business owners that go out there and say, "Oh, yes, let me spend money on here. I think my target market is there. It's going to get the return that I want." It doesn't work like that. It really works on you really understanding the pre event, everything that you need to do beforehand in order to make that event successful. Then the on site, which is the execution. And then also post event. There's so much you can do after the event. So events should not stop with a 1 day mentality. They should go throughout the whole 3 to 6 month time period that you have in place for it.
In terms of the purpose of events, why do most companies do them? Is it to give back to the community? Is it to get leads? In your eyes, where do you see events playing a role in businesses, and where do you see the top of the tree in why a lot of companies do events?
A lot of the big corporate companies, for example, have a full strategy on it. Now, the only reason why I'm bringing that up is because it is actually as relevant to smaller businesses as it is to corporates. So, what I mean by that is that same strategy that I spoke to you about, so attending events, so that you can meet new people or network with your industry, sponsoring events so that you can actually get your brand out there and connect with a particular industry, hosting the event yourself to bring in your clients, your stakeholders, your customers, so that you can showcase your brand. Now, from all those things, the two highest ones are definitely staff events, where you're trying to retain, because having a calendar of events to retain your staff, to get them excited about your business, to make sure they understand your vision. Do you know what I mean? And with that vision, you're able to grow your business. And staff retention these days is one of the, we all know, toughest things to do as a business owner. So there's that aspect. And then the second part is the branding aspect, which you mentioned, but also the sales aspect, which is the expos and trade shows that I mentioned earlier. They're very, very effective. A lot of the time, smaller businesses or small, medium-sized businesses don't understand how to tackle that. But once they understand how to tackle it, it is a great source of building relationships and getting new prospects on.
Let's talk about the post event, because you mentioned there's a lot of things you can do afterwards. What are the things that you recommend that companies should do post an event?
Yeah, so the first thing is obviously the surveys, just making sure that you collate those surveys, get an understanding of how your event was received, and then what are you going to do with that data to service your clients or whoever attended your event better next time around. Do you know what I mean? So that's one. Two, it's the follow-ups. Do you know what I mean? Most of the time after an event, your clients or your potential clients are excited. They want to now work with you because they've opened up, they've seen a different side of you. And this is what I always say, when we ask our clients to work with us, we tell them, look, you have to be the face. You're the host. People are going to come for you and no one else. Do you know what I mean? So they want to understand who you are. And the more you're upfront there, the more better results that you will see. So again, the follow-up is super, super important. Whether it is through an email campaign, the follow-up, or through phone calls afterwards, or even just by simply saying thank you is another big thing. Then last but not least is the reporting aspect. So there's so many different ways of measuring events. There's the surveys, there's the hashtags at an event, create a hashtag. There's live polling conversations. There's Q&A conversations. All those things these days are recorded. And there's such great data that you can go back and utilize for your business.
That's awesome. Now, I'm thinking of a small business, and I've gone to lots of events. Most of the events that we attend, unless it's professional development where you're learning, generally free events that you go there for free. There's some food, you listen to some speakers, you might mingle with the networks of that industry. But generally, you come out of there going, you get value based on what you've put in. Where do you see, I feel like sometimes it's better to host an event where you charge people to attend. I feel like my thought on that is it adds pressure, adds an element of responsibility by the event host to provide value because they're being charged. So we've done a lot of events in the past where, we've had speakers in about industries, opened it up to our clients, and then we might get 20 or 30 replies into a small, like a little room. And then on the last minute, we have 10 or 15 people cancel. And I feel like it's disheartening and people don't rock up. So talk to us about, obviously, the value that you're trying to provide to the audience. And do you think even at the smaller scale, is there a merit to charge a nominal fee for the event? And what are the benefits of those two things?
Yes, there is a merit to charging a nominal fee. However, it also depends on what you're trying to achieve as well. So the biggest thing around this is that a lot of businesses plan for events for the short term and not the long term. So it's the consistency, the repetition, the constant inviting is the one that's going to show you the results at the end, and not the other way around. So what I mean by that is, if you are hosting a webinar, make sure it's every month. Make sure it's driven by a purpose. Make sure the topics are relevant. So all those things need to be aligned in order for you to see results from that particular webinar. It's the same thing with your podcast. Do you know what I mean? You need to hit those milestones in order to get the results. So a lot of people think about events very short term. They think, okay, if we host a couple of people, it will be great. But yes, although you've had 10 people cancel, Sivan, the next time you host that event, the retention rate on that is going to be a lot more stronger. People are going to say, oh, it's a bit more consistent. The 10 people that came the first time, let's say they had a great experience, they're going to go back and talk to someone else and say, oh, I went to this amazing firm that hosted an amazing event. You have to come with me next time. And they're going to refer you another person. This is the part that a lot of small businesses miss because they tend to do it sort of sporadically. It's my experience from smaller businesses. But there are also smaller businesses that know exactly the value of events and have that consistency running through that. No one.
I love it. Now, when we host events, something always goes wrong. I'd love for you to share an example of where you hosted an event, things didn't go to plan. Either it ended up being okay or you were able to turn a negative into a positive. I'd love to hear a really cool story. There must be a few on the journey that you've had.
Yeah, sure. I just want to preface this by saying that all event managers are like ducks. We float on the river, but our legs are flapping like crazy on event day. And we're always smiling because we want to make sure that the client is always happy. I guess one of the award ceremonies that we had a new event coordinator that was helping us with the awards himself and setting them up. And at the table, we set up the first set of awards and it was all ready to go. All the other awards were placed underneath the table. And because she was a new event coordinator, she completely missed the fact that there were more awards underneath
Oh, no.
for the awards ceremony. So there was a moment or two there that we had to lose. We were using one award, so a previous award for the same giveaway. So
Yeah,
we kept using that same award to try and finish off the night. But that was heart stopping. But the best part is everyone left with their awards. Everyone was still happy. They still had their photos. So these are the things that you need to be mindful of. And they left. So which is great.
I love it. And tell us, what are some of the critical things? So if I had a blank piece of paper, I'm starting an event, we talked about food, video, photography. If we had to quickly jot it down, what are the things that people need to think about? So if you had to go, okay, quickly write down, these are the things you need to know about, bang, what do we do? What do we need to do to fill up that page of to-dos?
Yeah, to do's. Okay. So the main thing is give yourself ample time to plan the event. Okay. Think about all the different aspects of the event. The best way to do this is actually start with a wish list. How would I want my event to look like? Even if it's the biggest wish list in the world, just write it down. You just want to write it down. Then you start cutting things down from there. You see? So that way you understand where your one, and this is the second part of events, is your budget. Ensure you have a budget in place because events can get out of control. We know that if we don't do that. So the key is make sure you have that wish list, have a budget in place, and then write up all those tasks from location being number one, venue number two, three, your catering or how long the event is going to be for as well. Four is your content. So the content means speakers, entertainment, whatever type of event it is. That's the only thing that's actually going to attract attendees to come. So 70% of attendees make their decision based on the content that you provide. So if you had a great speaker at your event, Sivan, you would have attracted a lot more attendees to the event. You see, it's the same with entertainment. It's the same with the program itself. How in depth is it? Does it speak to the values of that particular industry? So, content is another big one. And then, last but not least, is also the marketing aspect, promoting it. You need bums on seats. It's really as simple as that, because an event, it doesn't become an event without those things.
And one of the things people put too much emphasis on event, when we did our event not long ago, I was a little bit obsessive making sure, we had the best food and made sure that everyone was dressed appropriately and blah, blah, blah. Like there was all these little minor things that I put a lot of energy into. What's the thing that business owners or people that aren't experienced in events are just focusing the wrong area? And what are those things that people don't really care about if you get it right or wrong? What are those things that we focus on that really doesn't matter in an event?
Food is important, but how important is it for that particular event? Do you know what I mean? Dressing up is important, but how important is it for that particular event? So, what I mean by that is, like you said, you put all those emphasis on those things, but the event really, number one, should be driving what you're trying to achieve with the event. Yeah, that is the key. So, as long as you understand that and you design your event around that, then you'll be able to hit your goals with it. So this is what event professionals do really well, is that they understand that part, but also will give you all the fun elements that come with an event. We know that part is important to you and we're not discounting it at all, but we want to build your event around the purpose first. What are you trying to achieve? Let's get that for you, because what's going to happen is, by us showing you that you've achieved your goal, you're going to repeat that event. You're going to want to do that event because it delivered those goals.
We're running out of time, but I want you to give a pitch. Events seem like things that ordinary people can just do. They can book a venue, they can book catering, they can book a speaker. But what is the reason people should call your company Icon Corporate Events, and why is it important to get a professional to support businesses in doing that?
So the logistics part, which you just mentioned, which is book the catering and all that, anyone can do, yes. But it's the purpose-driven event is what we deliver really, really well, especially for businesses and corporates. Results, ROI-driven events, not just events that are just going to host the best of the best. Yes, nothing wrong with that. But what is the purpose? What are you trying to achieve? What is the return on investment of that particular event? How many people attended? Were they engaged? Or did I achieve my goals through that? And that's the reason why, especially a lot of great businesses that understand the value of events hire us.
I love it. Now, I'm assuming you don't want any brides calling you. You don't do weddings as events.
I don't do weddings. As much as I respect a wedding planner, I cannot.
You can't do it. No, that's fair
I
enough.
can't do it.
It's probably the biggest event I was involved in personally to organize. Wasn't a little while ago. It was the
Yes.
biggest thing that we did. But your focus is in the corporates and the business, and look, there is a bit of an ROI when there's a wedding. Hopefully for years to come. But we like
Yes.
measuring the business and corporate event ROIs a lot more. Some say that events are dying breed due to the rise of the digital marketing, social media. Where do you see events going forward? Is it a dying breed, or is it going to get even better?
It's definitely going to get better, Sivan. And the reason for that is, as much as the digital world has been able to bring us together, it also is isolating us and setting us slightly apart. And these are something now that a lot of the public is actually fighting the social media companies for, because it's creating a lot of disconnect, especially among younger people, audiences, and companies are trying to reach that audience. And the way they're doing that is through events, and events by creating all kinds of events. These days, there's actually a plethora of exciting events. Companies are even moving to concerts. If you've heard of Dreamforce by Salesforce, it's like a 7-day party, really, but with a lot of content. So, in saying that, there has been a lot of companies and business owners shifting towards that, because they want to engage their workforce, they want to engage the newer clients that are coming up. So it's only getting stronger and only getting better from here. So the future of events is actually quite strong. And AI is also playing a big part of that as well, because as AI is shifting those jobs, events are becoming more popular again. So it's interesting. Interesting times, that's for sure.
I love it. No, that's a great answer because I'm seeing more events now on my calendar. People want to go out. They still want to work from home. And there's an element of not coming into the office as often in Melbourne, particularly. Our office has been great. People are still very like coming into the office, but they want to balance that with seeing people in an event environment. We must be similar age, Eyob. I was born in 79. When I was in my 20s, to meet people, we went out. So what would happen is you go to a pub, a bar, a restaurant, not a restaurant, a nightclub, and that was like our event. But these days, Tinder and all those kinds of things, people aren't going to music places and entertainment. So I think corporate events is sort of like how people get entertainment in a way. So I think, there's an opportunity for businesses to fill up that space and get these young people to talk to each other outside of an iPad. So definitely we do have an element to play in making sure the next generation can actually talk to each other face to face as opposed to just on a laptop.
And that's exactly it, Sivan, because there is so much information out there these days. You can essentially find your community. Do you know what I mean? So that's what they call it these days with events. You're building community. So you could be the quantum community, you could be the accounting community. And people just want to be around like-minded people rather than going out and doing that. And events is delivering that really, really well. So that's why it's becoming bigger and stronger every year.
Eyob, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with our listeners today. I know how important events are to business, even though with the digital world at the moment, people are looking for connection. So I know that I've enjoyed this conversation. It's inspired me to continue to do events for our business and the bottom line, but loved it talking to you. And when you come down to Melbourne, I'd love to see you face to face and maybe we can do part 2 on a studio at the bottom line.
I'd love to be a part of that, Sivan. And Melbourne is a great place to be. So I'll definitely come and say hello for sure.
This is The Bottom Line, a show designed to help Australian businesses succeed. This podcast was produced by accountancy firm Alexander Spencer. At Alexander Spencer, we've been helping business owners realise their goals since 1952. And we play a pivotal role in developing, implementing, and supervising the business goals and strategies of our clients. To find out how we can help your business succeed, head to our website, alexanderspencer.com.au. To make sure you don't miss an episode of The Bottom Line, be sure to subscribe to or follow the show in your podcast app. And while you're there, leave us a 5-star review. It really helps others find the show. I'm Sivan Tuna, and we'll be back next episode with more tips to help you transform your business. And that's The Bottom Line.